Huzzah! Everybody, welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and sometimes we have to switch our mics at the last minute, which, enhances the reputation of the show for technical excellence. We came in 943rd for an Emmy Award for one of the shows we did that launched almost perfectly. But in any event, good to see everybody. Glad to be here. A lot of fun news, actually. Good news, pretty much across the board. So that's a pleasant change for last month. So what's actually going on here? Well, first of all, I just got back from Nashville, Tennessee, where I was summoned by Daily Wire. And every time I see that place and interact with those guys, I get more and more impressed. I really just absolutely amazing what they're doing. Let me see if the audio seems like it might be a little tiny bit low. But the good news is we had a talk with the powers that be, Jeremy Boring and a bunch of the other guys. They're very happy with the America's Forgotten Heroes series, and so am I, actually. And so is the reaction has been amazing and very gratifying. So we're going to do another set of those for sure, another 7 of those. We're going to do a number of other what we saw kind of things. They asked me to pitch some ideas, and I said, why don't we do one on conspiracy theories? Just get a little away from the history, just for giggles. And the reason, actually, I wanted to do that was there's just no way to say this without just sounding like a guy who wears glasses with no prescription. But the reason I really wanted to do that was because I've been spending a lot of time with Shakespeare lately, honestly. And it's either Shakespeare or Chaucer, my evenings in front of the fireplace with my burgundy smoking jacket and my fez, my deerstalker pipe. But yeah, so... Oh, and somebody here said, Political Animal said, we need video this time. As you know, if you've been staying here, we did shoot video last time for America's Forgotten Heroes. And they said, I found out this last trip why they didn't go with that. And they said that it made the set just looked small. It just looked small, and I had to do the whole thing kind of standing up. And they said they just thought it actually took away from that. So I don't want to be, let me get this autofocus turned off because it's making me dizzy. That's as focused as I get. Did I say deerstalker pipe? I meant to say meerschaum. Yes, thank you, Dave Big Booty. We have pipe experts always in the house here. They said we might go back and reshoot those with video. They're thinking they're going to build me another set, I think, which would be nice. And I would like to just keep them coming. So, as I said, the reason I wanted to pitch a conspiracy theory series is, first of all, to make me a lot of high-quality enemies from virtually everybody. Because there's virtually everybody, even people like right now in the Stratosphere Lounge, there are people who, if I pick 7, there's going to be almost nobody who's not firmly believing in one of those. But, my job is to call them as I see them, and maybe I can change some minds. But I really wanted to talk about Shakespeare, because I've been reading an awful lot about that. Again, reading an awful lot of Shakespeare, an awful lot about Shakespeare. Many shows ago, it was years ago now, I would think, I'd just seen a documentary called Anonymous, I think. No, a feature film called Anonymous. I forget what the documentary was. In any event, it was one of these things about the case for making Shakespeare was all written by Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford, who succeeded Christopher Marlowe, who succeeded Francis Bacon. So there's always always been somebody, starting in the late 1700s, somebody proposed as the actual author of Shakespeare. So I saw this thing that was the case for Edward de Vere. And I remember saying on the show, after watching this, I remember saying, I will never, ever again, dishonor history by claiming that this, wool merchant from Stratford-upon-Avon is actually Shakespeare. Clearly, it's just impossible that he was. And then I did something that I've gotten in the habit of doing because I really don't like being embarrassed. And you can understand if that means I'm pretty much constantly in perpetual pain. But I did think, if this theory's been around for a while, and it has been, and all of the traditional Shakespearean scholars say it's nonsense, maybe they're not all in on the conspiracy. Maybe I should read, the traditional theory. And in the space of an hour, I was so utterly, completely blown away by the overwhelming, unbelievable mountain of evidence that the plays written by this William Shakespeare of Stratford-upon-Avon were actually written by William Shakespeare of Stratford-upon-Avon. I mean, it's absolutely astonishing, the mountain of evidence that is there saying that he did it. And that's why no serious scholars take any of these things seriously. The most important stuff about it is just the constant number of records and the constant references of a guy who'd been in these theater companies for 30 years. And so this is what interests me about conspiracy theories. And this is what I want to get to, because at one point or another, I've believed in some of them. I believed in Bermuda Triangle. I believed in the Shakespeare authorship one. I never believed chemtrails, never thought the moon landing was faked. Never thought 9/11 was an inside job. I used to believe in Loch Ness Monster. I used to believe in the Roswell crash. And I was disabused of the ones that I had been, and the Kennedy assassination. So once I read just a reasonable explanation for what happened, I looked at all of these cases where I had believed in the conspiracy, and I really believed it. And I realized that in order to sell that, you have to. I cannot credit that anybody who's selling any of these conspiracy theories are not aware of the fact that they're just plain lying, because there's so much evidence in all of these cases that just simply has to be overlooked. Either that, or they are so determined in advance that this has got to be true that they don't even bother to do what I did, and I just did it out of curiosity. I'm not publishing a book on Edward de Vere, because Edward de Vere is kind of a creepy guy. And Marusha Dark is getting to be like the hero of the comment section here. It's a conspiracy theory that Joe Biden won the election. I'm going to talk about that one because I think that needs to accumulate some evidence. But my point is, in order to sell these conspiracy theories, they're all basically constructed the same way. There's a series of blockers, objections to why what you have been told was true wasn't true, right? And so these things are presented in such a way that they are absolute roadblocks, that there's no way to get past them. And once they put 6 or 7 of these roadblocks in the way for why what you think is happening isn't happening, then they make a very, very vague case for why their theory is correct, and they produce essentially 1 or 2 pieces of evidence, and when you throw that against the roadblocks, you realize, wow, you're sold, right? I mean, you're what else can you believe? It's unbelievably dishonest. It's just unbelievably dishonest. I'll give you a couple of examples. One of them was that Shakespeare, William or William of Stratford, as the Oxfordians like to say, couldn't possibly have written the plays because both of his daughters were illiterate. And I thought, how can the greatest writer of all time have daughters that were illiterate? And then I realized, I'd do some studying and realized that women didn't get educations until the end of the 1600s, late 1600s. Shakespeare died in I should know this now, 1614, 1616, somewhere in there. I forget which one of those two. They didn't mention that in the conspiracy books. They say that there was never, ever found a document written in Shakespeare's own hand. Well, that's pretty much true for all of the Elizabethan playwrights, which they also don't mention. Although there is a play, and I knew this a couple of hours ago, but it's flown my head. There is a play written in collaboration where one of the scenes, scholars are as convinced as they can be. This one page, is it Thomas More? Sounds like it would be Thomas More. Is clear. It's called Hand D. So they've got these different handwritings, right? One person's writing in Hand A, Hand B, Hand C, and Hand D. And that's another great point too. And Hand D is widely accepted among scholars to be Shakespeare's handwriting. So I just looked up Hand B. You can do it right now. Just Google Shakespeare, quote, Hand D. And you'll see that was William Shakespeare writing a collaborative play. But here's the part I find interesting about Shakespeare, and that's why I just want to get this out of the way, and I got a bunch of other things to do, and we'll get on with the questions. But all of the objections to Shakespeare now, just in this particular conspiracy theory, all of them they come from the same place. And they come from an extremely snotty idea, intellectual, egotistical place. The reason that people don't believe that William Shakespeare wrote the plays written by William Shakespeare is because, number one, William Shakespeare took very good care of his money. He actually became really, by the standards he started from, really quite rich. So they don't like the fact that he actually not only wrote for money, but took good care of his money and lent money and sued people when they didn't pay him back. They say, how can somebody who wrote Shylock in Merchant of Venice possibly have been the kind of guy who would go after somebody for 16 shillings? Well, kind of guy who takes his money seriously. That's the kind of guy. And again, the evidence is just overwhelming. He was one of the people that owned the Globe Theater. He was one of the people who owned shares and all this other stuff. But the fact that he cared about money and was good with money disqualifies him as the author of the plays in the minds of many people. I find that to be extremely unconservative way of viewing things. But the real objection is that he couldn't possibly have written the plays because he was essentially a country bumpkin. That nobody from the country with essentially a grammar school education could possibly have written about all of these things. And I'm not going to spend 2 hours on this, but it is a form of absolute snobbery. Because the people who read a lot of Shakespeare, and especially the people that turns Shakespeare into a kind of a demigod, are people who are really quite bright. Shakespeare's not an easy read, and people who read a lot of Shakespeare generally tend to be pretty smart people. And the idea that it was a guy on a farm, basically, some farmer came off his tractor, you want to modernize this, some guy rolled in on his tractor, he's got his coveralls on, he's got his John Deere cap on, and hands somebody a thumb drive, and on the thumb drive is the most amazing poetry and drama ever written. They can't conceive of it. And I find that to be unspeakably elitist and absolutely indicative of the problems we have today. They just couldn't believe it. So he'd been performing in plays as a young man, and then eventually started writing some of them, and then he wrote more of them. They were so popular, they ended up basically being the house playwright for the Lord Chamberlain's men, and then eventually the King's men. But even when he was the resident playwright, they were doing a different play a day. They might perform 30 or 40 different plays in a year. And there was a lot of collaboration, a lot of other writers. So in any event, I just was really interested in looking at that mental dynamic that I fell for. Because I figure if you are somebody who's fallen for these kind of things, then you could probably be a good person to explain why you fell for them and what convinced you otherwise. But in the case of Shakespeare, it's just absolutely, just shockingly overwhelming. And people, and this is the final thing about it, when people say that Shakespeare couldn't have written it, they say the reason he couldn't have written it is because he couldn't have experienced it all. How could he write about the law without being a lawyer? How could he write about falconry without being a falconer, which is a sport of kings, right? How could he have written about Italy if he hadn't gone to Italy? And all of this constant stuff is like, it's a denial of the imagination. It's a complete denial of the imagination. What they're basically saying is, you couldn't have written The Tempest unless you'd been shipwrecked on an island with a sorcerer. The guy was such a. This is the thing about Shakespeare that drives people insane, and this is a prejudice that conservatives face to this day. The reason they hate William of Stratford is because he was a practical man. They can't stand that. They cannot cope with it. And the fact that he was a practical man disqualifies him from having written these, and then you start hearing all the adjectives about Shakespeare and the soul of man and blah, 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 blah. No, he was a regular guy. I know I said William of Shatner. I nearly got very close there. But see what I mean? I find that really, really, really interesting. Really, really interesting. That attitude that a practical guy can't possibly write poetry. That's what they think about us, you know? Now, as I've said many times before, I'd rather listen to an engineer sing than drive over a bridge that was designed by an actor. But there are people that are capable of doing both, and it is that elitist kind of. In the case of Shakespeare, at the time of him actually appearing on the scene, fellow writers were basically saying they called him an upstart crow, enriched with our stolen plumage, because he didn't go to Cambridge and he didn't go to Oxford. How can he possibly be a great playwright if he didn't go to those universities like the rest of the smart guys did? So the Shakespeare one is going to make the case for the fact that the most brilliant writer ever was a guy who grew up apprentice as a butcher. His father made gloves. He went to public school, didn't go to the university, and had an amazing imagination, and furthermore, an astonishing memory, and even more important than both of those, he had an uncanny ability to observe things. And that's the thing, right? So how could he have all of this nautical information? He probably sat for a couple hours and had a number of ales with a sailor. And he probably asked the kind of questions that I would ask, which is, give me some terms, give me something that feels, tell me about what's. So you write those things down and people just do it. I have told this too many times, but when I sat down with an actual member of an active member of a SEAL team, and he started talking, the recorders in my head went to high speed. I said, I got to get all of this down in my head because this is what these guys really sound like, not what I imagine they sound like. And anyway, I just had to get that out of my system because I've been spending a lot of time back there with that, and it's been really, really indicative of the whole phenomenon. The last book I read was the book on the time scale of the authorship question. First it was Bacon, then it was De Vere. He was the front runner for a long time, and somebody else is making a bid. And anybody but this guy who was good with money and went back and retired and lived in the country. So anyway, but yeah, Political Animals got it exactly right. I'll just read this verbatim in the live comment stream. The elitists do not believe in the spark of divinity for the peons, so farmers and tradesmen could not possibly have an imagination of their own. Perfect. Exactly. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. I just love the fact. I love the fact that Shakespeare wasn't actually a farmer, but he was a regular guy. Young Shakespeare was the kind of guy you would see on Dangerous Jobs. I'm sorry, Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. Oh, and by the way, tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, I'm doing a podcast with Mike Rowe. So, isn't that fun? I shot on Monday. I shot a second season of a show on Fox called American Built, and an expert on things. And so we talked about the first season. We talked about the 747, Saturn V, and the Nautilus, USS Nautilus. And they brought me back for second season, so they talked about the atom bomb, which I know something about, the lunar module, which I know something about. It's on Fox Business, I think, and the light bulb. And I remember calling the producer of the light bulb and saying, I'm acutely embarrassed to say this, but sometimes when you're acutely embarrassed, the thing to do is just kind of come out with it. I don't know why I don't know why I'm listed on the light bulb. I don't know anything about the light bulb other than, and then I started talking for half an hour. Come on in. So I talked about what it was like writing in the dark, living in the dark, and so on. And I did 15 minutes of research, and I found what I was looking for. The research I was looking for when I became an expert on the light bulb was, how much brighter is a light bulb than a candle? Anybody want to take a guess? 100-watt bulb. 100-watt incandescent bulb. How much is that compared to a candle? Well, I forget what the actual numbers are. I had them in front of me. A candle is something like, I should know this, 12.7 lumens is what one candle puts out. 12.7 lumens. If you had a gas lamp which put out a fan of a flame, that might put out 100 lumens. A really good gas lamp might be 8 candles bright. So 12.7 lumens for a candle, 100 lumens for a good oil lamp or gas lamp, and then the electric light puts out 1,600 lumens, which is 157 candles. 157 candles. Every single light bulb is 157 candles. You can't get 157 candles in one place. And furthermore, they only get as bright as the flame, but a light bulb gets so bright you can't look at it. So it's 157 times more light. And that kind of is where I went with that thing. So anyway, as I'm getting ready to do the first of these things, and the guy who was the producer on the show, who asked me to come back, said we just loved the stuff you did the first time around, had been a producer of Mike Rose, and he was just mentioning that. And I said, oh man, I just love the guy, I just worship him. He said, oh, we talk about you all the time. We think you're a swell guy. I said, well, why am I not on the show? Well, you haven't. How did we know you wanted to be on the show? It's an excellent point you raise. So I said, I'll crawl across broken glass to be on that show. So sure enough, email went back and forth, and then I made a phone call today after I got back from Nashville. And I said, Bill, Mike and I love your work. We just love to have you on the show. I said, how soon can we do it? And he said, how about, well, I said, when's your next available? And he said, well, probably tomorrow. I said, I'll take it. So he had so Mike's show is called That's How I Heard It. Something like that. Already embarrassing myself and probably going to lose the gig because of it. So Mike does a 5-minute story read, and then they bring somebody on and talk about it. So they had a number of episodes. They said, any one of these you like? One of them's called Clean Up on Aisle 4. Another one's called The Toy Maker. Another one is called How Not to Ruin Your Most Expensive Suit, which I like the sound of. And one of them was called The Boy Who Loved to Fly. And I said, well, why don't we do that one? The way I heard it. Yeah. So, so we'll shoot it tomorrow, and we'll make announcements and so on. Yeah, I was going to say maybe they'll put out a DVD, but DVDs are obsolete now. But speaking of DVDs, I've been in constant communication with Lord Doomcock, who sent me an email on the drive over here, which I haven't had a chance to read yet. But after going back and forth for a week or two with my mom and everything, I talked. So we did the show last Thursday, And I think the week before that we did it on Friday. And after 2 weeks ago show on Friday, I went over to the Doomcock live stream and introduced myself. To my astonishment, he knew who I was. To his astonishment, I knew who he was. And we're going to be doing something together. I'll probably just drop in briefly after we're done here tonight. I'm not going to be able to stay out too late tonight. But yeah, and people talking about Sargon of Akkad and so on, and all of it. But anyway, it's just starting to be fun. So I'm looking forward to doing that show with Doomcock. I just listened to and watched a Nerdrotic episode today, and he lives in California, and he's basically saying we'll all be locked down by now if it weren't for the fact that we're having a recall election. I said, yeah, man, let's talk about that. So we'll see. Sargon is my English counterpart. I thought I was my English counterpart. That'd be fun. In any event, yes, please put in a word for me anywhere. I'll do all of these things. I've always wanted to, and now I don't know. Something just kind of slipped in a good way. It's like something got unblocked. So yeah, I'd love to do all of them. But I'm very happy about doing the micro thing tomorrow, so that's good. And then as soon as I get off of this Stratosphere Lounge nonsense, then I'll check out that email from our overlord. He begins every email. We've exchanged 4 or 5 now, I would say. He begins every email by "Hail Bill." What a cool way to start an email! Always hail this, hail that, hail Harvey, hail everybody, hail Lord Doomcock. And I didn't know that was the name of a gun until recently, because I actually got to the point when we were getting ready to set show up. I thought, I probably ought to warn Doomcock that that he's associating with a known scientific racist and Nazi, and does he really want to get his fingers dirty like that? And I immediately did a web search for Doomcock, and he's been called a Nazi so many times I'm actually jealous. So there you go. Doomcock is on somebody says I have a link. Doomcock is on YouTube, and his YouTube channel is called Overlord DVD for Dictor von Doomcock. Overlord DVD. And then Mike's got his own website, and I think that's where I'm sure they host him on YouTube as well. But anyway, and somebody said, "Can we watch that live?" It's like, I can't actually. It's not my property, and I don't really do that. But I'm looking forward very much to doing it, very much. And they really strive to be non-political, which I'm looking forward to be honest with you. I really am. And that's why Mike is just so popular. Mike just doesn't talk about his politics, but he does talk about regular people. And I think from that point it's pretty clear. I am astonished, and then I'm honestly, we'll move on. I am astonished about how openly political Doomcock, Nerdrotic, Critical Drinker have become in the last 2 years that I've been listening to them. Openly political now. Openly conservative, although they don't call themselves conservatives. They're just, boom. So this is everything is proceeding as I have foreseen. 10 years ago, I thought, man, in 10 years we're going to be in real trouble. Now I think, no, we're going to be fine. We are really kind of coming out of growing progressivism, past peak progressivism. I would say the rise of Skywalker. No, sorry, The Last Jedi. I would say that was peak progressivism. And then, boom. Mr. Tomes, who actually got the introduction to me, I'm very grateful, Mr. Tomes, Miss Tomes, Mrs. Tomes, Madam Tomes, Sir Tomes. I don't want to use the wrong pronoun and lose the gig. Says that they're less covert about it. They haven't changed their philosophies at all. That's true, but they are less covert about it, and that's interesting, I think. So anyway, yeah. So I'm going to go to the comments section on Facebook. We mentioned this before. We we are, Scott and I are well aware of the fact that we got like major website issues. We're pretty convinced that WordPress can handle our volume, but our number of hits has gone to crazy numbers of I was just astonished at the number of hits on our website, which is great news. And by the way, I've noticed on YouTube our numbers are starting to creep up again. That the right angles are all breaking 10,000 now. So undoubtedly, it's time for them to get their wrench out. But yeah, I'm feeling more and more confident every day. We got the cool kids on our side, and me too. So there that is. So we'll see. Anyway, so I know the forum is on billwhittle.com has been here and there. We are going to do not even a rebuild, like a blank piece of paper build. We'll wait till Scotty gets back. Yeah, so we'll see. We've been getting a lot of pleading actually, and genuine good advice about the Discord channel that's been set up by Marusha Dark and others. And there's a link in the live comment section, and I need, you know what? I threatened to do this last time, didn't I? And I didn't do it. So hang on. Yes, I tried to do this last time. I tried to get into the Discord server. Let me try the screen name that I had. What was that? Because I tried to do this when we mentioned it last time, and if I can do this, I can include the link on the YouTube embed. Verify by phone. If it was this difficult to vote as it is to, start a Discord, forget even start a Discord channel, just log into Discord. Then our problems would be over. Let's see. An existing Discord account is already using this number. Please remove it before it can be used with the new account. I don't know what to make of that. I know what I do know is I can't deal with it now. So I ran into something like this last time. In any event, we'll get that sorted out. So that's pretty much it. Yeah. So California, somebody mentioned the recall election. The political ads have gone entirely now into this crazed Donald Trump lunatic-loving Larry Elder is going to get everybody killed because he says we should drop the mask mandate. And when I did the when I looked at the comment section on YouTube, which wasn't for Larry Elder, there's a lot of people saying, "Is this a Larry Elder ad?" So he is basically he's basically putting all the chips down on the fact that we all want to be keeping these masks on for the rest of our lives. And I don't know if that's a good idea, although there are a lot of cowards here, and Karens too. Court out so yeah. So they've had the California politicians that have governed California exclusively for the last century or so now are trying to argue that the recall is unconstitutional. It may in fact be, but interesting, isn't it now that this law that's been there, that we actually that we put in place and stuff, it's not working for us anymore. So we're going to have to repeal the law rather than obey it. What a bunch of losers. So anyway, that's about it for right now. I think, and they're saying Newsom is happy because early voting is coming in strongly in his favor, and he doesn't realize he's dealing with people that vote on election day on or near. I'm not going to do it, so I can tell you what I was thinking about earlier today. I was actually thinking, I'm sure it wouldn't be too terribly tough for me to get another ballot. And I was actually thinking, I think it'd be interesting to see if I could vote twice. I know it's a felony, but since I said I'm not going to do it, I'm not going to do it. But I could always say, well, I went to track my ballot and I couldn't find it, and I was sure it was gone. And I didn't falsify the information. It's not like I put a fake name down. I'm just curious to know. In any event, yeah, they found a guy in a car, as Helios points out, passed out, a former felon. He's got 300 recall ballots next to him. So anyway, so anyway, like I said, we're still wrestling with the forum over at BillWhittle.com. So I'm going to go to Facebook. And then after this is over, between now and next Stratosphere Lounge, to try and resolve this Discord thing and take some questions there too, I guess. All these newfangled technologies are tough for me. I'm certainly not going to deal with it now, though. So what do we got? Hail Facebook. It's strange, actually, because Facebook has censored me considerably less than YouTube. And so I strangely feel like, oh, aren't they swell guys? The shows we did with Zoe today were about loyalty and censorship, so a lot of this stuff came up. The gist of which is, every time I've seen anybody try to censor somebody, it's because they're scared and they know that that their arguments are inferior. Otherwise, like us, we would be more than happy to debate the merits of a position. Censors are cowards, and they're idiots, and they're arrogant. All right, so here we go. And in the Facebook page, I'm going to see what happened here. So on the Facebook post, I mentioned for tonight's show, it'd be great to have some recommendations or some suggestions for a new set of America's Forgotten Heroes. Don't forget the forgotten part. Otherwise, I would have lived with Neil Armstrong. Clay Bradley, how's it going, Clay? Says Richard Bong and others from the Ace race, and then Jay Zemer on Lucky 666 B17. A number of other names. There's the pilots on the Yamamoto shoot down. Eugene Flucky, Father of Modern Subwarfare. All of these are interesting, but here's the thing about it. It really has to be kind of a career, because we spend 50 minutes on these guys, and it can't just be that they did something heroic. They've got to have a career. So that kind of narrows it down a little bit. Certainly did for me when I started kind of combing through the list. So I'll keep that in mind, and we'll see if we can find something else. Now, right below it is Dave Olson saying, "Hey, Bill, I hope you and Lieutenant Commander Melnikova Whittle enjoyed your all-too-brief Odyssey to America." We did very much. Thank you. If you crazy kids ever come and see the Twine Ball, dinner is on me. As for Forgotten Heroes, I would nominate James J. Hill, towering figure in American business who built the only transcontinental railroad. Yes, I know of this guy. One of the things that we pitched to them, and which we might do, is government versus private enterprise. And if we do, then the story of that of Hill and his private railroad as opposed to the government-funded ones be great. A professor, I'm forgetting his name now, at Hillsdale College wrote a book called The Myth of the Robber Barons, and I interviewed him at PJTV. And he talked about how have traditionally been two different kinds of entrepreneurs, political entrepreneurs and market entrepreneurs. Political entrepreneurs, the guy gets a great idea and then decides he wants to get into bed with the government to not only get paid for it from the government, but also to keep competitors out. Fulton was one of those guys. And then entrepreneurial, market entrepreneurs are people like Commodore. I'm not even going to look. Vanderbilt, who let's just open this thing up, and you end up providing much higher quality service at a much lower price. So I'm thinking about doing that. So he's a consideration. I mean, I really have to. It's a tough call. The first seven were tough. Now, right below this is Joe Pomeroy with a person who I had in the original seven, and that's Norman Borlaug. Joe writes, Norman Borlaug, if it hasn't been done yet, I read a lot. I read a lot in school, and even might have read 2 sentences on a dude who's the reason we're all here. I believe the two most stabilizing forces preventing continent-wide conflicts of the early 20th century are nuclear weapons and the abundance of food. Joe, that sentence is, we should put that on our money. We'll need bigger coins. But that's exactly right. Nuclear weapons and the abundance of food. That's really profoundly correct. There are now 7.6 billion people alive today, and the only reason a single one faces starvation is the misuse of government power. Americans burn 50% of our corn. We can grow enough to feed everyone. Norman Borlaug is the foundation of that stability. I knew this about Borlaug, and I had him down second or third in the original seven. And then I realized I'm not entirely sure how I can make 50 minutes of watching wheat grow interesting. But I pulled it off, I think, to my satisfaction, with Booker T. Washington. So I'm a lot more confident now. Norman Borlaug has saved more lives than anybody on planet Earth. Norman Borlaug alone has saved billions of people's lives. And anytime anybody comes down on capitalism or America, you just hold up Norman Borlaug and it's the trump card for everything. Even if you take America at every single criticism of it in the most harsh and unrealistic criticism of America, even if you take all those numbers and add them up, Borlaug blows them out of the water. Just Borlaug alone is enough reason to justify anything that Americans have done. For those of you not familiar with him, he was an agronomist, and he was the guy who really figured out how to grow crops with less water, grow pest-resistant crops. And when I say grow, I mean grow. I don't mean biologically or genetically engineer and then patent. I mean just he just grew strains of stuff. He started this, I think it was called the Green Revolution before green meant communist. And he fed the world. And people in Africa and all around the world now, places where there was starvation all the time, are growing crops that'll grow there because of Norman Borlaug. He cannot be overstated. His importance cannot be overstated. Yes, he's going to make it, and I can definitely get in there. I figured if I can do Booker T. Washington, which was a challenge because the Booker T. Washington episode, everything's internal. So Borlaug is in for sure. He's in. So let's see what else we got here. Someone mentioned Bezos. Just what a disgusting guy, you know. I mean, he had more money than anyone in the universe. He and SpaceX. We've done a bunch of right angles on this, but now that he can't do anything, now he's suing the government to take back or at least re-examine giving SpaceX the lunar landing thing. So if you can't beat him, sue him. There we go. Steve Young suggests American computer scientist and mathematician Grace Brewster Murray Hopper, PhD, one of the first programmers of the Harvard Mark I. Okay, that's an interesting choice. I don't know much about her, but that's why we call it America's Forgotten Hero. So it's my job to get in there and find out. Let's see what we got here. Dave Curtis has lately been watching a couple of different channels on YouTube by the same guy, Mark Felton. He's a historian who goes into all sorts of little-known stories from history. He's a Brit and tends to focus more on British stuff, but it's just about impossible not to learn new stuff. He has two channels, Mark Felton Productions and War Stories with Mark Felton. It's mostly World War II stuff. Might be a good place to look for inspiration. My understanding, as I recall, believe it or not, Jeremy asked me to do history stuff for Daily Wire probably 2 years before I did the Apollo 11 thing, and I said, number one, I don't have the time and the research, and I can't do that kind of writing. But they were pointing to Felton as a guy who's, if it's the same guy who did a World War I series, He said, it's really compelling stuff, and we know you know your history. And I basically passed on it because I just didn't see how I would possibly find the time. He came back to me a couple years later with with the Apollo 11 anniversary, and that one I knew I could write. And once I did, then kind of broke the ice on that. So I have not ever seen any of his stuff. However, I am certainly gonna look at it. I've heard he's very, very good. I generally try to stay away from people that do more or less the same things I do. I never listen to anybody else's political podcasts or shows ever. I mean, really, never. And I think that's probably wise. But in any event, we'll see. Oh, Helios tells me that Bezos has also been trying to block Starlink. What a miserable lowlife. That is just so pathetic. It's so pathetic. So anyway, we will see. I'm just kind of chugging through them here because I can't really stay too late tonight. I actually, well, I just can't stay too late. So thanks for that, David. D.F. Kentdale, hello, D.F. Since Bill wrote my favorite and all-encompassing dispute of the American empire crap, and since Ragnar Clavin is now saying that we are an empire and that it's a phase in all great nations, I'd love for the two of them to get back together on this topic. So I haven't seen Andrew Clavin in several years. Daily Wire moved out of LA about a year ago. So we were in Nashville, and we got wrapped up before about an hour and a half before the car was ready to pick us up to the airport because things were happening in Afghanistan so quickly. So Natasha and I put our bags in the makeup room at the Daily Wire place in Nashville, and then we just basically took an Uber downtown, spent 50 minutes on the strip there. And then we came back, and as we come back, we're just, the car taking us to the airport is waiting for us. We come back in to pick up our carry-ons, and I go into the makeup room, and sitting in the chair is Andrew Clavin. And that was a bit of a shock. I looked at him, and he really did one of these, kind of looked at me, and he just went, it took about a second and a half to process that I was actually in his presence. It was good seeing him, actually, although I did carry that guy for so many years. So anyway, so I'm looking at these things here. I wouldn't mind talking to Drew about an empire. And you know what's fun about this is I wouldn't mind talking to Drew, arguing with Drew about whether or not the United States is an empire. I wouldn't mind arguing with Larry Elder about whether or not the election was suspicious. But that's what this whole thing's supposed to be about, right? This is what Zoe and I talked about on censorship issue today with Virtue Signal. We're allowed to disagree. And if he makes a good case, I mean, I worked with Andrew, we did 5,000 shows together, so that's not likely that he's going to make a good case. But if he did, I would change my mind. And this is okay, you know. This kind of thing, I've mentioned it many times before. Of all the things that just gut me and make me want to just hang this whole thing up and just go write ad copy or run a Walmart someplace, the one thing that absolutely guts me is this, well, I've been following you for 17 years, but then you said something that I disagree with, so you're dead to me now. And it just makes me want to just say, yeah, you know what, I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm finished. I could take all the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, which was written by William Shakespeare, not by Edward de Vere, from the front. But when I get them from behind, it's tough. It's very tough. So let's see. Now, this one has a ring to it. See, because this is a career. Steve Young says, what about Preston Tucker? that, you know, Tucker's an interesting choice, and I'll tell you who else is an interesting possibility is Howard Hughes. Although he's not exactly a pleasant story. But that kind of thing where you know, in the case of Hughes, and I don't think I want to do Howard Hughes, but the the thing about Hughes as an example is there's a guy who's you know who spent you know 25 30 years together. Dave Big Booty says Hughes and Tucker are well known. They're well known to people with half an education, but most Americans couldn't tell you who they were. Maybe Hughes, they couldn't tell you what he did. There's a lot of guys like Sperry, you know, who worked with Doolittle and stuff. And Sperry is an interesting guy, and all those guys. But Doolittle was a hero. So you know, it's gonna be tough. So we'll figure it out. Yeah, the new aircraft carrier is. I know the name. Doris Miller. Um, Now, let me just say this, okay? There's no question that people like Doris Miller are really, really underrepresented and need to be recognized. But his heroism on Pearl Harbor, it, I don't know how else to say it other than to come out and say it. I just come out and say it. That's a destroyer, right? That's the kind of thing where you get a destroyer named after you. But an aircraft carrier that has been named after presidents, with the exception of, and by the way, um, what's the name of it? Stetton, having one of those days. Nimitz wasn't a president, but Nimitz was worth an aircraft carrier. Now, somebody help me out. What's that? What's one of the Nimitz? Stennis. Thank you. So Stennis was a guy who politically really helped keep the Navy afloat and all that other stuff. But that's not an aircraft carrier either. And I don't. And this has got nothing to do with the black sailor, right? It's like if you told me about a guy. Look, in America's Forgotten Heroes, and the problem is is that I've forgotten the names of half of these people, but the guy who served that turret 52 on the Samuel B. Roberts, who put out every single one of the rounds of ammunition that ship had, except for the last one that he's holding in his hands when it exploded in the breach. He's been sliced open from collarbone to groin. He's holding on to this shell, begging them to reload it. They take him out of there, and while they're taking other guys out, he goes back in and Thomas Paine, thank you. And no, sorry. This guy's name I've forgotten. Anyway, so this guy gets the Silver Star, or maybe, I don't know if it was the Medal of Honor. That kind of thing is the kind of thing you should name ships after. But aircraft carriers, this just feels political to me. It just feels, you know. I don't know how else to say it other than to say it, right? Exactly. That's just it. What he did is more than worthy of a destroyer. But you know, I don't know. I didn't think Stennis deserved a carrier either, so I guess there you go. You know, there you go. I certainly don't have any objection to him. There's a lot of people, you know. I'm still frankly kind of pissed off that one of the three, or one of the two or three. How many Seawolf class subs do we have? We have Seawolf, and we have the Jimmy Carter. Now, number one, he didn't deserve an aircraft carrier. I don't think he deserved an attack sub. I think Jimmy Carter. I think the Simpsons. The Simpsons are always. Well, they were back when they were funny 30 years ago. I just love this. There's an episode where they're trapped in. The Simpsons are in Australia or something, and the military is trying to get them out, and they say, "Do we have any aircraft carriers there?" And they said, "No, all we have is the USS Walter Mondale. It's a laundry ship." And that's, you know, yeah. I just love it. It's a laundry ship. That's all the ship does, is it just does laundry. The USS Walter Mondale. Laundry ship is just fabulous. Anyway, so look, I'm actually I'm more offended about Jimmy Carter than I am about Doris Miller, and he certainly earned honor and recognition. I just like to see things. I'll come right out and say this for those of you watching on Media Matters. I'm only putting this into the episode so that when you take me out of context, I can play the actual video. I would have no objection whatsoever, if we're not going to limit it to presidents, if you wanted to make the USS Booker T. Washington a Ford-class aircraft carrier. That guy earned it. He had an entire lifetime of service. And I'd be the guy leading the charge for that. There we go. But it's a hard thing, this thing, to find, because it is it's a strange kind of a category where, we don't, it's a lifetime. So we'll see. Hey, Merlin Wendelbo. We'll refresh. I understand somebody's got a question there somewhere. Whatever. Oh, yeah. Wazer 13 said, this is too close to comfort, actually. I predict before the end of the Biden Kamala reign, we will have a USS George Floyd. I'd be willing to bet you. Yeah. So let's see. I'll check in a minute here, Wazer. So I'm going to do Merlin, and then I'm going to do Wazer question or questions, and then I'm going to get the devil out of here. So Merlin, how you doing, Merlin? Long time no see. Now, it seems to me that up until 9 months ago, most anti-vaxxers were liberals who thought the vaccinations gave kids autism. Am I misremembering? No, you're not. History is being rewritten. See today's Moving Back to America segment called Our Taliban Partners. And 9 months ago, when it was Trump's vaccine, it was the worst thing in the world. But now that Der Fuhrer, St. Biden, is trying to make it mandatory, it's suddenly butterflies and rainbows. Can we please get Republicans to push for proof of vaccination in order to vote? And put the Democrats in the bind of either IDs aren't racist or mandatory vaccination is. That's actually, now that you put it that way, it's actually kind of brilliant. That's actually kind of brilliant. Yeah. Make it just to run it down. If you say no, you have to have proof of vaccination in order to go and vote in public. Okay. No, that's actually very good, Merlin. Congratulations, you get a star for that one. That's really, when you first said it, I just thought, wait a minute, and then I realized, no, the man's onto something here, and this is how you should be fighting. This is how you beat these swine. All right, I'm refreshing. No, there's no logic. Helios says no logic that works on these people, but it's not a question of logic. It's a question of outcome. You see. So let's see what I got here. I'm looking for a Wazer. The light's bothering me for some reason. Oh, hey. Hi, Bill. Wazer 13 here. I will answer both of these. I would like to know your thoughts on 2 points. Number one, all the abandoned cutting-edge military gear and the hasty retreat of Afghanistan. China will no doubt swoop in with a deal for it and reverse engineer all. As a former military and engineer myself, I can't help but feel outraged. They easily threw away all this effort in R&D. Let me address that before I move on to point two. It hasn't been linked on Facebook yet, but it should be up on BillWhittle.com. I haven't checked it in a couple hours. But the last Moving Back to America I did, which I posted before I went to Nashville, was called Free Advice for General Milley. And I listed at the end of that just a fraction of what we left there. And we left them an Air Force of 46, I think 42, 46 Black Hawk helicopters, millions of rounds of AK-47 ammo, millions and millions of rounds of AR, M4 ammo, tens of thousands of rounds. We left them 20,000 grenades, just hand grenades. Wizard said, luckily they have no pilots. That's true, but, as we've discovered, if you have thousands and thousands of hand grenades, you can mess up some people's day. CP Tome says they already crashed a Black Hawk. I hope that's true. Anyway, so yes, I've already addressed it. I read the list, and there are just no words for this debacle. And Biden is what Biden is. But it's actually beggars imagination. I saw a good point today. I think it was Kurt Schlichter, my friend Kurt Schlichter, who I don't know super well, but basically I really like the guy, and when I do see him, it's always good to catch up with him. And he basically said, what was it that Kurt Schlichter said in an article I saw? Oh, come on. I was calling for them to resign, needless to say. And I was talking about denial of assets. What was the point that he made? It was just a really great point. What was it? It'll come to me. I remember when I was doing the thing on the... I probably got the ammo wrong. In any event, of all the things we left them, the thing that is the most disturbing to me is we left the Taliban 16,000 pairs of night vision goggles. 16,000 pairs of night vision goggles. And we used to own the night, but we don't own it exclusively anymore. It's just unbelievable. It just defies imagination. And now I don't know this. This is a question because, as you know, the vast majority of people watch us on YouTube, but we have a live comment stream, and those people can take time to check things. While if I do that, it's dead air. We exchanged, what was it, Bo Bergdahl, the traitor who ran away, had 5 guys killed looking for him, came back under Obama. Remember that stink? And then got a sex change operation, I think, courtesy of you and me, and while he was in the armed forces. Did we trade him for a leader or the leader who started the Taliban resurgence? I know I've heard that we traded him for like a major guy. And by the way, somebody pointed this out about Afghanistan, which I haven't talked about all show, so I guess we'll talk about that for a bit here. Was the leader of the Taliban? Is that what we got? We gave the Taliban their leader back, and we got Bo Bergdahl, American traitor. That's a good deal. That's a deal that Democrats can be proud of. Oh, for God's sake! Sometimes I just can't believe it. 5 people. We gave him 5 people, including the guy who's leading this Taliban thing, and we, it's not like we gave him those 5 people for Neil Armstrong. I just don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I'm absolutely stunned. I did a segment on it today called Our Taliban Partners, and how it's all mirroring and basically it's just spin, right? Now, the Taliban has always been our partners in peace. No, it's just part of the transition to power. We've been working with the Taliban forever. They're our allies. It's ISIS-K that we must be angry about. Look, this is what I mean when I say if you want to cure people of this, you got to give it to them. There are people out there who thought that Joe Biden knew what he was doing. It's going to be tougher to make that case now, but when all of the information is controlled by one side, and when there are no tough questions being asked of one side, then people who are not digging for information and knowledge only hear and believe what they hear and believe. And so now it's like, okay, this is who you voted for? Did you see him fall asleep when he was talking about this? Did you see him lean down on this thing, because somebody asked him a tough question? Is anybody who voted for Biden proud of him? I know a lot of people are defending him. There's no question about that. But is anybody proud of him? And is there anybody who voted for him and said, no, he's fine. He's sharp as a tack. Having just dealt with, and I've been saying this, not recently, I've been saying this since Biden became even in the race. I have some experience with Alzheimer's. And it's not only not going to get better, it's going to get worse, and then it's suddenly going to get worse very fast. In other words, this slope is decreasing, and then there's going to come a point where it's just going to fall. It's just going to fall off. And what are they going to do then? And nobody likes Kamala Harris. Nobody. She came in 7th in California. Okay. All right. If that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. You know, the United States is under nuclear attack. Yeah, millions have been killed in horrible thermonuclear explosions over New York City and Los Angeles. Okay, this is what you voted for. This is what you want. This is what you got. I don't know any other way around it. I'd love to suddenly have a way to tell you this is how you fix it, but no. These aren't American trends. They're not 21st century trends. They're not 2021 trends. These are historical cycles that have been going on since we've been people. So now all we can do is just strap in and be ready to make the point. So let me go back to point number 2. And the fact that the Biden administration delivered a list of people. Oh, I remember the point that I was going to say earlier. This wasn't Kurt. There are estimates that there may be thousands of Americans left in Afghanistan. The best estimate I heard is 1,500. The U.S. military is welding the gates to the airport shut now, so nobody else is getting out. And if you remember how 52 American hostages paralyzed a Democratic presidency for 444 days, because I do remember that, what are they going to do when they have 1,500 hostages? You know, I hate to put this as bluntly as this, but sometimes if you're going to speak the truth, you have to just come out and speak the truth. If you've got 1,500 hostages, you can afford to shoot a bunch of them on camera. Just execute on camera. That increases your leverage, because 1,500 hostages, you can afford to make a pretty big point. And I'm not even going to think about it. I'm just not going to think about it. Okay. Anyway, number 2, the fact that the Biden administration delivered a list of people the U.S. wants to evacuate, essentially giving a kill ransom list to the enemies. Best regards and best of luck. P.S. My suggestion for American Forgotten Heroes are Dom Pedro II of Brazil. He's an American, just South American. Does it count? If not, maybe then Calvin Coolidge. Okay. Calvin Coolidge is an interesting choice. But let me just address this American thing once. This just needs to be said just so you can have it in your pocket, okay? Occasionally you will hear people say, people from South America, and sometimes Mexico, get fully outraged and say, how come people who live in the United States are calling themselves Americans? We are all Americans. North America and South America, we're all Americans. How dare you just assume that you are the only Americans? To which I reply, well, genius, we're the only country in the Americas that has the word America in it. Period. Now go piss off. It's not that we're assuming the name, it's just we're shortening it. We are United States of Americans, but we have American. The country is called the United States of America. Now, if the Colombians called themselves the Colombian Republic of America, or the Colombian Republic of South America even, you'd have a case. But they didn't, so you don't. They don't. Nobody's got a case. This whole argument just needs to be just shut down like that. We're the only country in the Americas that has the word America in our name. That's why we call ourselves Americans. So, there you go. That's it. Simple. And you need to learn these arguments and prosecute them with enthusiasm. So last one from Eduardo. Hope I didn't out you there, but it is Facebook. Wazer 13 here. My suggestion for Americans Forgotten Heroes: Dom Pedro II of Brazil. Oh, so I guess I just read your question twice. I did, in fact. Okay. Um, well, yeah, that's just them being, yeah, just them being kind of pissy, you know. So there you go. So I have a summons from the future ruler of the earth. Came up through the pneumatic tube from the center of the earth. And I got to get to that. I'll probably just jump over there while I'm uploading this and spend a little time over there, not too long. Um, and I think that'll probably do it for this fabulous edition of the Stratosphere Lounge Friday edition, on account of I was out of town on Thursday. I'll have the information for you as soon as it's available for the Mike Rowe podcast, which I am very much looking forward to tomorrow. And and as other things come up, I will certainly let you all know. Okay. Thanks again for joining us. The show's made possible, like all of them, by the members at BillWhittle.com who pay for things so other people can watch them for free. Um, Stratosphere Lounge crowd is a very, very, very high percentage of members, but some of you aren't, so just something to think about. That's all I'm saying. We are going to have a rockin' membership drive when this animation thing is finished, and I thought I'd have it finished in time for the Jeremy trip, but almost. I'll have the first chapter done by next Thursday. I've been saying that for 9 weeks now, but this time I think, there you go. That'll do it. Thanks again for joining us. Great to be here, and thanks again for the astonishing amount of goodwill regarding my mom and everything else. It means the world to me and all of our relatives who saw it and saw 2,000 comments and nearly 100,000 views. It's enormously comforting and gratifying. So thank you all of it. All right, so that'll do it. We'll see you next time right here on the Stratosphere Lounge.